Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today's Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A non-profit organization in Georgia, the Bail Project, which helps thousands of incarcerated people get out of jail as they await trial. Actually, the national organization, they've closed their Georgia branch because of the Republicans' new law that strictly curtails the freedom to post bail for others. We'll talk to an official with the Bail Project. Folks, also, President Joe Biden took the time to remember civil rights icon Reverend James Lawson. We'll show you what he had to say. Also, I have the exclusive video. I moderated a panel in 2017, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, ALC. We were talking about Colin Kaepernick and protest. Who happened to be sitting in the audience in the corner of the room? Reverend Lawson. Which I show you what he had to say to those assembled. A jury finds President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, guilty on all charges in his federal gun case. And the Justice Department and a Tennessee school agreed to agree on steps to prevent race-based harassment targeting black students. Also, we will again debunk the lie that Donald Trump saved HBCUs. Dr. Walter Kimbrough, two-time HBCU president, we're here to set the record straight. Plus, got a few words about folks complaining that rookie WNBA player Caitlin Clark did not get chosen to be on the 2024 Women's Basketball Olympic team. And Ward Dunn, of course, has his celebrity golf tournament, benefits his initiative to help single families get housing. It is time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
How many times do you have to tell y'all Republicans do not give a damn about the poor in this country? Beginning July 1st, folks who cannot afford bail in Georgia will be stuck there even if they have minor nonviolent charges. Why? Because Governor Brian Kemp signed SB 63 into law, a bill Republicans drove through that expands expanded the use of cash bail. Now, here's the deal: the bill restricts charitable bail funds, one of the only lifelines for low-income people to have, from actually putting up bail for those individuals. Organizations like the Bail Project provided free bail assistance to hundreds of people, but now will cease their operations in Georgia because of this law. Jeremy Jerson is the Director of Communications for the Bail Project. He joins me now from Los Angeles. So Jeremy, here's what to me is just completely stunning. So what these Republicans are saying is, it's perfectly fine for a rich man to put the money up for Donald Trump to appeal his case that he lost in New York. But we can't have a nonprofit raising money that puts up bail for somebody with a minor nonviolent offense. So they can't afford to stay there. Well, they can't afford to get out. They just got to keep their behinds in jail, costing taxpayers more money likely than what the bail is.
Well, thanks for having me, Roland. I agree with you completely. The cash bail system creates a two-tiered system of justice, one where people who can afford to pay bail are able to get out, one where people who can't have to remain incarcerated. They lose their jobs, they lose access to their homes, their children. People with behavioral health issues find those conditions worsening in jail. And like you're saying, it increases the burden on the jails themselves, cost taxpayer dollars. We've said for a long time that we think cash bail is a failed public policy. There are more effective ways to address public safety concerns than to use a mechanism like forcing people to pay bail. When bail exists, people who can't pay it wind up unnecessarily incarcerated. And we've been fighting against that for a long time by offering free bail assistance to people.
So what I don't understand is, so they're essentially saying that, how dare you as an organization bail people out? And so, oh no, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and bail your own self out.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what the services provided by an organization like the Bail Project offer. In Georgia and Atlanta particularly, we provided free bail assistance and supportive services to about 1,000 Georgians who returned to court 91% of the time. And that's just a subset of the 30,000 people we've helped across the country with similar outcomes. We provide them with minimal intervention. We provide them with court notifications, travel assistance to and from court. And when people need some help, whether it's by getting a job or finding access to housing or addressing issues related to mental illness or drug addiction, we help connect them to services that can support them. And so I think the Georgia legislature has been looking for a boogeyman. They've been had a very aggressive posture, at least in Georgia and Atlanta, towards the local bail fund there, the Atlanta Solidarity Fund. There was a big show of force from police because of their alleged engagement in the Stop Cop City protests. And they showed up with effectively a SWAT team and armored vehicles to arrest a couple of nonprofit employees. So I think this is retaliation against that, which has made local officials very concerned, the protests about the police training facility that's being built there. But ultimately, they've misunderstood the services that we provide. We are addressing a gap in a ineffective government support network. You know, effectively, what we're doing is something that government, if it was running properly, would do. And so we're meeting unmet needs, we're addressing unmet needs, and we're helping people. And that really closes the revolving door of justice that the Republicans tend to complain about.
But what you also are doing, you're extending people a helping hand. And really what Republicans are trying to do, and I keep seeing this all over, they want to associate their fictitious rise in crime on folks who have been who've been getting out of jail. And that's really the game they've been playing. They want to assign blame to anybody, even if the FBI stats show the crime is actually down.
I think that what's important to recognize is that organizations like the Bail Project and many folks that advocate for bail reform are people that are just as concerned about public safety and keeping neighborhoods safe as Republicans say or claim that they are. And the difference is that we tend to rely on evidence, and government and some of our opponents or opponents of bail reform are folks that tend to look for convenient political talking points. But what we know that communities need to thrive and to feel safer is they need access to the supportive services that address the root causes that might lead to justice system involvement in the first place. And that goes very far back. I mean, it makes sure that we provide good food or good schools or public transportation that's effective or good housing, as well as providing services that address things like behavioral health concerns like addiction and mental illness that wind up leading to many people becoming incarcerated in the first place. Our jails across the country are becoming the largest psychiatric institutions in the United States. That's a ridiculous mechanism. Even folks on both sides of the aisle tend to agree that police particularly are being used for things that they shouldn't be used for, like addressing mental health crises. And you know, an effective government would be one that looks much more holistically at public safety concerns, looks to prevent justice system involvement in the first place. And I don't think that they are doing that right now. I think what the Georgia legislature has done is extremely short-sighted. It'll tend to fuel mass incarceration in the state by forcing people with low-level misdemeanors and low-level offenses to become incarcerated because bail will be required to be set against them. I mean, we're talking about people that might have issues with loitering because they're unhoused or something like that. That's not an effective public policy. If the government was serious about safety and really interested in making sure that people in Georgia were safe and getting what they needed, they could have invested their legislative time for a myriad of other options, whether that be expanding the sort of preventative services that I've described so far, or making sure that the pretrial network, pretrial services in particular, are expanded and offered to people more widely than they currently are.
So the net effect of this decision, the people in Georgia, you get a minor nonviolent offense, you can't pay your bail, you're screwed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's true. There will be a lot of unnecessary incarceration. There will be more people incarcerated as a result of this new law going into effect. And they really should have thought about that. And Georgia has one of the worst case processing problems in the United States. Cases last there longer than most elsewhere, and they didn't deal with that. Instead, they dealt with finding ways to lock more people up, which is very disappointing.
Are y'all seeing this happen across the country? Are other states looking to do what Georgia did?
I think it's important to point out to viewers that, bail reform is effective in a myriad of places. There's at least a dozen jurisdictions across the United States that have implemented some form of bail reform, whether that be to minimize or completely restrict the use of cash bail. Illinois being the first state in the country that has completely eliminated the use of cash bail. And they do that in favor of a system that just it creates a robust series of hearings where judges have to make a determination about whether, if somebody is actually a risk to another person or persons, if they were released, that they would detain that person. They need to provide evidence to do that. I think you see regressive legislation coming out across the country in certain states, and I think that often is foolish, because there are more effective mechanisms to do this that keep communities safe and stop the revolving door of justice and crime that Republicans tend to complain about.
All right, Jeremy, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Folks, I'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus. Get a van. Get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Devon Frank.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, my Tuesday panel, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA, joins me from D.C. Randy Bryant, DEI disruptor, also from D.C. Joe Richardson, a civil rights attorney out of Los Angeles. Joe, I'll start with you. I mean, listen, what you have here, this is just Republicans continuing to attack people in this country. They ain't pro-life. They don't care about human beings. They just want to say, oh, we're tough on the crime. This does nothing but hurt the poor people in Georgia.
Yeah, it accomplishes absolutely nothing, and any negative trend just already negatively affects those who are already behind. And in the cash bail world, you have a situation where for a long, long time, you've had to deal with the notion of two people who are charged with the same thing, having not only different outcomes because they respond to the pressure of being in jail or not being in jail, but they're treated differently from a cash bail standpoint. And so one brother who has the money, one person who has the money to do what they need to do, they get out, they get on the street, they get an attorney, they have the leverage, theoretically speaking, from a resource standpoint, to affect a better outcome. And then the person that doesn't, who's more often than not, or more likely to be a person of color, and perhaps a black person, is in jail, has a much more difficult time getting out of jail, and because of that has fewer in the range of options. And so at a time where in many jurisdictions they've shown how getting rid of the cash bail system, modifying it or minimizing it is actually effective as a political ploy, when you just lock them up. You don't have to be right. You don't have to be equitable. If you just lock them up, people still run for office on that. And so, therefore, in a situation where someone's now in jail longer than they would be, in Georgia and particularly, we've had deaths of people that have been infested by lice and other things like that. They're in conditions that they wouldn't be otherwise. And by the way, we're paying for it as if they're actually getting something that makes them better off. So it's actually bad all around. It's a political ploy, and we'll have to see where it goes. Hopefully, we can have a response to this, but that response is going to have to do with voting, being aware, and being reminded of the urgency that situations like this give us for this election.
Mustafa, these folks, this is what they do. They are heartless. Adam Sir with The Atlantic, when he laid out about their cruelty. He said the cruelty is the point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's about penalizing the poor. That's exactly what it's about. We see it through numerous pieces of legislation that they've introduced and then passed on the state level there in Georgia and a number of other locations. Most folks don't actually probably realize that every 3 seconds in America, somebody's arrested. We got 10.5 million folks who are arrested every year in our country. The average for bail is about $10,000. So if you are somebody who's working class, if you are somebody who is dealing with a lower income situation and you have to face this, then you know that more than likely you're going to not have the resources that are necessary to be able to be out while folks are then going to move forward on trying to, move your case forward. It is all about penalizing the poor. It is about demonizing individuals who haven't been blessed with wealth, and then using them as a scapegoat for many of these political ads and campaigns that, unfortunately, the Republican Party continues to embrace. So for those who care about what's happening, let me just say this real quickly, Roland. People continue to talk about they don't want to vote for Biden or other folks on the presidential ticket. This is a great example of when you vote, you can actually make real change happen in your respective states. So if you want to make sure that this no longer moves forward, that people actually have the opportunity to be free and to be able to plead their case, then you should vote. You should vote on that state level and that county level to make sure that you have the right things in place.
Randy?
It shows that they have created a system where they don't want people to be reformed. They don't want people to change or do better or have a chance in life. They're creating a system to imprison mainly Black people. Let's just keep it frank. And so they don't want us out. And so how can they make it more difficult for us to get out? How can they make it more difficult to penalize people who do not have the money to get out? And so it's just very obvious that there is no concern for us. They keep talking about how the prison system is another form of just modern day slavery, and it seems that way. So they don't want to give us options to get out because this solves nothing. It only hurts people, and that's obviously what they want.
Well, that's what they want, and that's what their goal it constantly is. And so that's exactly what's happening here. So there's no other way about it. They want to demonize the poor, and they're like, screw y'all. You got nobody advocating for y'all, so we can just go ahead and do it. All right, hold tight 1 second. We come back, folks. We're going to celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend James Lawson Jr., who passed away on Sunday. President Joe Biden releases a statement with regards to the passing of Reverend Lawson. That is next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app. Also support us as well, folks. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 a year. It's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. If you want to support our work, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal are Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Again, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back. A lot of y'all have been asking me about the pocket squares that we have available on our website. You see me rocking the Shibori pocket square right here. It's all about looking different. Now look, summertime is coming up. Y'all know, I keep trying to tell fellas, change your look, please. You can't wear athletic shoes every damn wear. So if you're putting on linen suits, if you're putting on some summer suits, have a whole different look. The reason I like this particular pocket square, the Shibori, because it's sort of like a flower and looks pretty cool here versus the traditional boring silk pocket squares. But also I like being a little different as well. So this is why we have these custom-made feather pocket squares on the website as well. My sister actually designed these after a few years ago. I was in this battle with Steve Harvey at Essence, and I saw this at a St. Jude fundraiser. I saw this feather pocket square, and I said, well, I got some ideas. So I hit her, and she sent me about 30 different ones. And so this completely changes your look. Now, some of you men out there, I had some dudes say, oh man, I can't wear that. Well, if you ain't got swagger, that's not my problem. But if you're looking for something different to spruce up your look, fellas, ladies, if y'all looking to get your man a good gift, I've run into brothers all across the country with the feather pocket squares saying, see, check mine out. And so it's always good to see them. And so this is what you do. Go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. You can order Shibori pocket squares or the custom-made pocket squares. Now, for the Shiboris, we're out of a lot of the different colors, and I think we're down to about 200 or 300. So you want to get your order in as soon as you can, because here's what happened. I got these several years ago, and the Japanese company signed a deal with another company, and I bought them before they signed that deal, and so I can't get access to any more from the company in Japan that makes them. And so get yours now. So come summertime, when I see y'all at Essence, y'all could be looking fly with the Shibori pocket square or the custom-made pocket square. Again, RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. Go there now.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Many people continue to honor the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. James Lawson Jr., one of our most crucial and pivotal civil rights leaders. He was the leader of the Nashville movement, trained so many of the folks who became icons, John Lewis, Diane Nash, C.T. Vivian, James Bevel, and others. Today, President Joe Biden released a statement regarding his passing. He said, born in Pennsylvania, the cradle of our democracy, James Lawson dedicated his life to fighting for our country's ideals. Hailing from a family of ministers, he became a disciple for freedom and a visionary of the civil rights movement. While attending Vanderbilt Divinity School, James Lawson organized sit-ins in Nashville, Tennessee that led to his expulsion from the university, but he kept marching on. His organizing and civil rights activism led to the desegregation of public accommodations in Nashville, one of the first southern cities to do so. His sit-ins became a model throughout the South. As a mentor, he taught the likes of Diane Nash, Congressman John Lewis, and countless others about the tactics and promise of nonviolence resistance. And as a minister, he preached about how the fight for equality, dignity, and justice for all was a divine calling. It is only fitting that Vanderbilt University now boasts the James Lawson Institute in honor of a man who was the architect of the Southern Freedom Movement and, later in life, a consistent advocate for human rights. Jill and I are saddened by the loss of one of the nation's noblest leaders. His passing before Juneteenth is a reminder that our nation's journey from slavery to freedom started in the hearts of people like James Lawson, spellbound by freedom. We send our condolences to the Lawson family as a nation mourns a man who helped redeem the soul of our nation. I told you yesterday when I first met Reverend Lawson, I was already familiar with him and his work. But it was September 22nd, 2017 at Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, AOC. I was moderating a panel that had, among the folks on there, Dr. Harry Epworth. We were talking about Colin Kaepernick and protests, things along those lines. And Dr. Everett Ward, who then was the general president of Alpha Alpha, told me that he and Reverend Lawson were about to leave. And I said, I'm sorry, who? He said, Reverend James Lawson. I said, he's here? He says, yes, he's sitting over there. And he was literally sitting in the corner, back of the room, not making a fuss at all. And I could not allow him to walk out of that room and not speak to the folks. And so when I got home today from my trip in Atlanta, I went to my archives and found this 7-year-old piece of video. Here is the brilliance of Reverend Dr. James Lawson, Jr.
In appreciating our folk who put the time in terms of leadership and made it possible for us to do what we do. If any of you understand SNCC, understand civil rights movements, understand true teaching about true mobilizing and organizing, we have somebody who was at the vanguard of that, led the Nashville movement, Reverend Dr. Jim Lawson, who's here. Step on up, brother. Come on up. I got you right here. So I want, as somebody who taught those students nonviolence, but also taught them the strategies, your advice, and he is on my list, folks, who I was interviewing leading up to the 50th anniversary commemoration of the assassination of MLK, so we'll be chatting soon. What will you tell the folks sitting in this room they should be doing when it comes to protest and policy, mobilizing, organizing now, so when we come back next year, they should give us a report? What would you tell them to do? You can hold the microphone. You can hold the microphone.
Well, I've just been wandering around and wanting to listen, so I just decided to come to this group. You're asking me a huge question. And I'm not even sure how to begin. My work did not end in the 17 years I spent with in the nonviolent struggle in the South. Because one of the things that I know I'm very pleased with is that I started teaching poor people nonviolent struggle in Los Angeles and how to organize unions. And now Los Angeles has 800,000 union members, the second largest and most dense city in the United States with labor union, when California was a bitterly bitterly anti-labor, anti-union organization. That's happened in my lifetime since about 1980. 800,000 workers organized into democratic unions at the local level. And I know many black folk, many of us have critical of unions. I am too. However, the issue is not voting or not voting. The issue is if you do not have an engaged citizenry at every level of life who are awake and working and pushing and resisting and doing the work that needs to be done at the local level, that is the most important element for a democratic society. Not voting. Not voting. And I vote every year. I've had my voting rights taken away from me, and I've taken them back. So, an engaged people. And that's why, in my judgment at least, one of the things we need to do as struggle is to boldly insist that we have to be engaged in non-violent struggle at every point. In this most violent society of human history, we have to decide we don't have to be violent to do the work, and that our society has to change. And the language is important. Nonviolent struggle is not about primarily protest. And the media calls it protest. There is a better language. And we need to learn to use that language instead of the media language. Everything is not a protest. The sit-in campaign in 1960 went on for 4, 5, 10 years in many cities across the country without let-up. We didn't call it protest. We called it nonviolent campaign. The Voting Rights Campaign of 1965. Black folk were trying to vote in the South long before even I was born, in 1928. So voting was an issue. We did not have a voting rights bill. Congress would never have passed it. Presidents never supported anti-lynching laws. Lyndon B. Johnson told Martin King in 1964 in December, I cannot do a voting rights bill. I don't have the power. Martin Luther King Jr. came back to SCLC and SNCC and to the rest of us in the Southeast in 64, 65 and said, we must have a voting rights campaign that forces Congress and the President to do the Voting Rights Bill of 1965. You did not see that story in any of the 50th year anniversaries of the Voting Rights Bill of 1965. But that's exactly what did happen in 1965. So we in the black community need to recognize our necessity of learning to do resistance to the injustice. And the movement of the 50s and 60s and into the 70s is probably the finest movement that ever happened anywhere in the world in terms of people dismantling and starting the process of dismantling. And that was the first time any group of Americans in this nation since 1774 organized to resist in this country racism, states' rights, the lynching and all the violence of it. So we ought to be now engaged in putting together the national, based in every local locality, the resistance movement that will do in the 21st century what has to be done if we're to save our nation from extinction. Drop the mic.
Hold on, Reverend. 5 minutes and 5 seconds of sheer brilliance, Mustafa.
Oh, I mean, Reverend Lawson was the truth. I was just thinking about that interview that you did with him. He was in his late 80s, or no, late.
He was 91. Well, he was 91.
Right, and to be so clear and articulate, and to be able to share both the history and the moment you find yourself in, and a set of solutions, even in that moment. Is a gift and a blessing that so many of us need to not only hear, internalize, and to begin to move it into action. You know, Reverend Lawson once said that the heart of racism is the idea that a man is not a man. And we still live with that each and every day. A woman is not a woman, a man is not a man, whatever other labels you might use for an individual. But we find ourselves in that similar moment that he fought for decade upon decade upon decade. We are so blessed to have had him in the physical form for so long, and now to have him not only with the ancestors, but be in the spiritual form to continue to guide us forward.
You know, Randy, I remember, that day just crystal clear. And it's always interesting when I go to different CBCF sessions, and a lot of times people having no idea who's actually there, no idea who's even in the room. Actually, I first met James Bevel in one of the sessions as well, one of the extraordinary organizers of the movement as well, trained under Reverend Jim Lawson. And the thing that I keep saying to folks is that the reason why we've got to have Black-owned media telling our story, because I haven't checked, but I doubt very seriously a single national broadcast said a word about his passing. I doubt many of the cable networks did much on it as well. And so when we have these giants walking amongst us, men and women, we must do our part to make sure that we talk to them, get their stories down on tape so we can preserve that knowledge for years to come.
Just hearing him speak now, I was inspired, and I want that for everyone. And to know from where we come, from whence we come, helps us and gives us, empowers us to try to do more. His word that he used about engaged, us being engaged is really what we talk about every week on this program, about ensuring that we're an engaged people and we are involved in ensuring that we have the best future possible. He said that he did not believe that he would live until 40 when after the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm so happy, as we all should be so happy, that he was and remained here in a physical form at 95 and just so incredibly sharp. I can't believe he was doing that speech then, but his lessons will live on, and I'm inspired today and absolutely grateful for him.
Joe, after leaving the South, he traveled to Los Angeles, where he pastored Holman Church there as well. And so he was quite known there. I'm going to pull up in a second that in just a few months ago, in January, there was an unveiling of a street name there in Los Angeles after him.
Yes, he was quite amazing. He spent 3 years in India following the independence movement, learning the principles of nonviolent protest. Dr. King called him the leading theorist and strategist of nonviolence in the world. And I thought it was really interesting, too, in terms of what you just showed, him talking about strategy, including words, including how powerful words are, how you term something, how you frame an issue. This is it's not a protest. This is actually what's going on. And one of the things that I'm always wondering about this current generation, who may have the youth coming up, people my daughter's age, they may have a different expectation because they've seen a Black president, because they've seen a woman vice president, a woman that should have been president. But I wonder aloud about their strategy, right? And one of the things about the civil rights movement was that it was strategic to a T. I've talked to many people, including my late father-in-law, who worked with Martin, was the housing point person for the organization. And they talked about how when they had meetings, hey, listen, this is nonviolent. If it's not something you can do, we just appreciate you turning around and walking out, because here's the way that we have to do it. It's not just about what we'll do. And they also knew that any mistake, any perception, any film of them getting in a fight, them hitting back, undermines everything they're trying to do. Because even while they strategically choked organizations economically, including the city of Birmingham with the Birmingham bus boycott, they also moved hearts with white people who may not have been crazy about riding the bus with somebody Black because they hadn't before, but they weren't interested in sicking dogs on them either. So they were extremely strategic. He was such an architect of it. And so hopefully we can learn the lessons and look and see at people like him, because there aren't many more that can bear witness. Andrew Young's still around. There's a few others, but not many more. So hopefully we can really learn those lessons and really start to apply them today using things like technology, et cetera, dissemination of information in an instant worldwide. Use those things to our advantage and see if we can really take this thing where it needs to go.
I love how he redefined protest, Mustafa.
Yeah, as Joe and others have said, words have power. And often folks will try and use our words against us. So when we have strategy and we understand the psychological opportunities that exist through language, then we have the ability to actually, as Joe said, not just move, but to change the paradigm of the for all the work that Reverend Lawson and so many others did.
Absolutely. And again, just how he just methodically broke that down, saying it was such a difficult question. But yeah, he said it with ease, Randy. And I want so many people today to understand that when you talk about how Dr. King described him, being a master strategist, that to me is a huge missing component of so many things today. Folk want to talk, they want to protest, they want to yell, scream, and holler, but they're not strategizing on what they're trying to achieve.
Exactly. Looking at what do we want, what is our goal, and how do we get there, and how is it possible to get there? Not just acting from emotion, not just doing what we're feeling right then, because I know that's tempting, trust me, but to really say, how do we get to where we need to be, and sitting down and saying, this is what can and cannot work. I mean, that's real brilliance, and I think that's what's been missing from many of the movements that we've had lately. We need to get back to that. And even when we talk about the campaigns that are going on right now, like what is the strategy? I mean, what are our hurdles, and how do we get across those hurdles? So, and I had to laugh when he said, I don't know where to begin. And for a moment, he was so quiet and seemed almost befuddled. And you're like, what is he going to say? And then he comes out with this brilliance and just flows and shares with us, shares with us so much about the past, and just gives us hope for the future. Just outlines it if anyone pays attention about what we need to be doing.
Well, absolutely. And so we are awaiting more information from the family regarding funeral arrangements. And I really do hope folks will take the time to go to the Black Stud Network app, go to our YouTube channel to watch that interview that I did with Reverend Lawson. It was absolutely amazing. And I told y'all what happened. I was so mad. We had this great interview in, was it 2017? And the folk at TV One completely lost the interview. They lost it. The only thing that I have from the original interview, and I happened to find it and thank goodness I actually used my own GoPro. So I've got about 30 or 40 minutes of the original interview from our GoPro camera. Audio's not great, but luckily I was able to convince him to sit down and do a second interview. And he said yes, because it was just, again, it's needed. And when I look at so much of what's happening today, and I'm telling our folks, it's, we've got tremendous leaders, great folks, who are becoming ancestors, and mainstream media completely ignores them. They don't talk about them. They don't mention them. They don't really delve into their life. But that's also why Black-owned media is critically important, because we can't just simply allow other people to tell our story. That is important for us to do as well. And so, again, we continue to honor the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. James Lawson, Jr. All right, folks, we come back. More to talk about on the show, including we're going to break down and bust these folks who keep lying about Donald Trump and HBCUs. I mean, I'm talking about lie after lie after lie after lie. Y'all, they're all lying. So we're going to talk about that. That and Warrick Dunn, of course, NFL running back has done some amazing work when it comes to housing. Had an opportunity to go to Atlanta for his celebrity golf tournament, raising funds for his foundation. And so we'll hear from one of the women who has been helped by his foundation. We'll hear from him as well. Folks, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Now streaming on the Black Star Network.
It was my junior year at Georgetown, and Spike calls me and he says, Malcolm, what are you doing next year? So, graduating, you know. He said, take a year off, work on Malcolm X. I said, okay. But first of all, for the folks who don't know, Spike is my cousin. Spike is my cousin. Just for the person watching, like, how the hell is Spike just gonna tell you that it's true? It's true.
On a Next, A Balanced Life, we talk about how to get in touch with your feelings, emotions, how to find your North Star, and how to move your life along.
Because oftentimes what we'll do is we'll accept what the world says about us as the truth and how we see ourselves, which that can be completely contrary to what the Word of God says about who you are.
That's On a Next, A Balanced Life here on Black Star Network.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
The next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Dexter Jenkins is a faith-based financial mentor with more than 20 years in the financial services industry. He's passionate about helping families build generational wealth.
Even though I'm talking about things like prayer, I'm talking about things about reading the word, I'm talking about things like fellowship, I'm talking to members who are dealing with losing their houses, or I'm talking to members who, because of a lack of the handling their finances, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so what I'm finding is that they're not coming to church because they don't have a handle on their finances.
We're talking how to get wealthy through faith and our finances on the next Get Wealthy right here, only on Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table, a man Cornel West calls the greatest Democratic theorist of his generation. Adolph Reed joins us to talk about his eventful life and his book, The South, Jim Crow and Its Afterlives.
Somewhere between an electoral sweep or an out-and-out coup or putsch, I think the danger is quite real.
Join us for the Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
A federal jury in Delaware convicted the son of President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, of 3 federal gun charges. He faces up to 25 years in prison for those charges: lying on a federal screening form about the drug use and lying to a gun dealer, plus possessing the gun. The 54-year-old businessman and attorney's case came after a July 2023 plea deal fell apart that could have resolved gun and tax charges without prison time. Hunter Biden still faces another federal trial starting September 5th in California for allegedly avoiding taxes. And what you got going on, you got Republicans who are now upset. And I love that some of them saying, oh, well, this should have never been the case. Then you got Speaker Mike Johnson saying, well, it still shows you there are 2 justice systems, one for Trump and one for others. These folks are 100% trash, Randy.
Absolute trash. Absolute trash. We knew what they were going to say. The one thing we have to remind ourselves is that Hunter Biden is not running for president. And Trump is, and he has 34 felonies against him. So let's just, talk about the difference there.
Look, it's a difference. And again, what you have here, without a doubt, Joe, are folks who are joking. And I go back to that ridiculous interview Dr. Phil did when he said, Biden, he could, with Donald Trump, Biden, he can call these things off. So Biden will call off prosecution of Trump. Don't you think he would do it for his son? And he didn't.
And not only did he not do it, but he said that it would be going forward and that he wouldn't be pardoning him if he was convicted. And so now, that's not to say that the Bidens don't have privilege and access that a lot of regular folks don't have, but he did let the system do what it does. And his son is going to have to be accountable by sentencing guidelines. He probably doesn't go to jail, but that's because of the nature of the beast and the fact that he's never been convicted of anything, et cetera. But Donald Trump and Donald Trump's subordinates don't get to say that there's a 2-tier justice system, or at the very least that they're on the bottom tier of a 2-tier justice system. they're on the top tier, given the resources that they've had, the availability that he's had to lawyers, to money, and the fact that statistically speaking, he probably will never do a day of time, as it were. So they still got no complaints, relatively speaking.
Mustafa?
Yeah, but we know the justice system usually works for those who it was created to protect. So we know what has played out over decades, over actually centuries for Black and brown folks. So, I appreciate that we're in a moment where those who have had privilege are now having to also live up to the letter of the law. With that being said, we also know that addiction is a mental health issue, and it is also a physical health issue, and that we should be doing more to help people who are dealing with that. And we often just jump to the incarceration aspect of the conversation instead of also talking about how do we make sure that people never find themselves in that situation.
Absolutely, folks. Let's go to Kentucky, where a former Kentucky corrections sergeant will spend the next 7 years in prison because he was depriving an inmate of his civil rights. A federal jury convicted Eric Nantel of one count of deprivation of civil rights for his failure to intervene to stop the assault of an inmate, 2 counts of obstruction of justice for misleading state investigators, and 1 count of making false statements to a special agent of the FBI. According to court documents, Nantel watched the beating of a non-violent inmate and covered up the incident by lying about what actually happened. This right here is the latest example of a Department of Justice that's taking aggressive stances. For instance, this as well, the DOJ has settled with Hawkins County, Tennessee schools to resolve its investigation into allegation of race-based harassment and other discrimination targeting Black students. The month-long investigation discovered that the incidents of harassment, including a mock slave auction to sell Black students to their white counterparts, while white students repeated an open use of the N-word and a Monkey of the Month campaign to ridicule Black students. Although the school district took steps to acknowledge some of the harassment, the DOJ found the response was not sufficient to protect the constitutional rights of Black students. Under the agreement, Hawkins County schools must implement significant reforms, including hiring a compliance officer to oversee the effective resolution of race discrimination and harassment complaints, retaining a consultant to support the school district in implementing the agreement, and creating a discrimination-free learning environment for all, creating a new electronic reporting portal to track and manage complaints and the district's response to complaints, updating its racial harassment and school discipline policies to more accurately track and consistently respond to complaints of race-based harassment, training staff on how to identify, investigate, and respond to complaints of racial harassment and discriminatory discipline practices, informing students and parents of how to report harassment and discrimination, implementing listening sessions, school climate surveys, training and educational events on identifying and preventing race discrimination, including discriminatory harassment, and analyzing discipline data and amending policies to ensure non-discriminatory enforcement of discipline policies. I keep saying over and over and over again, Joe, elections matter, and a Biden-Harris Department of Justice has been far more aggressive on putting jailers and wardens in prison for their actions and also tackling racism in our schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And from school districts to police departments. Under the Biden administration, it's like under the Obama administration, you would have consent decrees for police departments that aren't doing the things that they need to do. Under the Trump administration, you had consent decrees taken apart, and you would go back to that at a time when they're needed just as much as ever. The stories here could have been out of the 20s or the 30s in terms of what that district was actually doing, what was being allowed to be done. The harassment, the bullying, the intimidation of Black students, a mock slave auction. Whose idea is that? How does that happen? And folks think that that's actually something that ought to be being done. And then they didn't go far enough when they admitted some things, but not all things. And that's why you need an aggressive Justice Department to continue to root out those things that exist and which are not necessarily getting less prevalent, particularly at a time like now. Votes matter, voting matters, election matters. And we better focus, keep our eye on the prize related to what it is that we need to do from an election, voting, participatory democracy standpoint, because everything is at stake.
Mustafa, we do these stories. They don't get really any attention whatsoever in mainstream media. And also, I don't understand why the Biden-Harris administration, they aren't talking about this sort of stuff from the podium, why Karine Jean-Pierre isn't speaking about this kind of stuff, because people out there, I mean, I saw somebody tweet saying, hey, we can get the George Floyd Justice Act, but you still are seeing aggressive prosecution dealing with criminal justice reform. They just not talking about it.
Yeah, and if you don't put a spotlight on it and you don't share with folks how the investment of their vote is helping to make real change happen, then you're least likely to be able to get it again because they think you haven't done anything. So they definitely have got to change that paradigm. We also got to make sure that not only is the DOJ doing an amazing job, and if they weren't, I would call it out, but they've been doing a really good job on a whole number of issues. And as we talk about voting again, it is so critically important for you to also be thinking about on the local, the county, and the state level about the individuals who are best going to not only protect your kids. It's amazing that we still have kids who are being put in these types of situations in the 2020s, right? But, you know, your vote helps to make sure that we have individuals who are going to not only make sure that the right people are there, but that we're getting rid of the wrong people. And we often don't talk enough about that. So, one, the Biden administration should be highlighting their investments and how change is happening and what they will do if they get another 4 years. That's what I want to know. What additional things are you going to do to build upon the successes of all vote? And the other part of it is that we've got this tapestry of pain and trauma that's happening in states like Tennessee and other locations where we're allowing individuals to do these inhuman things to our kids and use our tax dollars. Let me say that again, use our tax dollars to have racial harassment and these other types of things. So we need to just be mindful of the power of our vote and how it is also connected to our pocketbook and how it is also connected to the education that provides an opportunity for a better future for our kids. So we need to get up off our boat, get up off of our butts, do our research, and then vote.
Randy.
And this also goes to voting for even down to the school boards, and ensure that there's some oversight. What I don't like not seeing is a level of accountability. What happens when teachers or principals or resource officers allow this sort of abuse? Because that's what's happening in those schools to happen. I mean, it really burns me up when I see children being treated this way, because it is abuse. It doesn't just, the memories of what happened does not go away. It affects their self-esteem for years and years to come, maybe forever if they don't get some kind of counseling. And those people were paid. Our tax dollars were used. And it's just so incredibly upsetting to me. And so it's not just what are we going to do, but what are we going to do when someone doesn't ensure that our children are safe and protected? That's what I want to see. But absolutely, the Justice Department has been shining a light on all of these atrocities. We don't hear about it as much as we should, but we at least are hearing about it, and they're going after these people.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. Donald Trump and his Republican minions continue to lie about how great he was for HBCUs. We have broken this thing down on numerous times. Now they're out on the campaign trail, lying. So we're going to show y'all what the actual numbers are so you understand what the truth is. Folks, support Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network by joining our Brina Funk fan club. So you're checking money, order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal are Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And be sure to download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Also, don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available bookstores nationwide. Get the audio version on Audible. We'll be right back.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus. Get a van. Get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Sherry Shepard with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, this is Coach campaign season, and man, every time you turn around, you got Donald Trump, Senator Tim Scott, and others just straight up lying about Trump's record with HBCUs. If you listen to them, I mean, they were the absolute savior, the Jesus Christ of blowing wind into the Lazarus, these dead HBCUs. This is Trump literally lying and folks falling for it.
It should be 100% of the black people should vote for Trump, because I did more for black people than any president other than Abraham Lincoln. It's true. It's true. I did more than any president other than Abraham Lincoln. Think of it. Criminal justice reform. I took care of the black colleges and universities. they would come up to Washington. After 3 years, they said, why do you guys keep coming back? One of them, I got friendly with some of them, really good people. They said, every year we come back looking for money. They do a great job. Black colleges and universities, they have very little money. And then you look at Harvard and these maniacs, and they have billions and billions of dollars. Very unfair. We're going to have to look into that whole situation. We're going to have to. And Elise did a very good job when she destroyed that person, the big plagiarizer from Harvard. I think did she plagiarize every document she ever wrote? I think so. The only thing she had going for her was nice glasses, if you like that look. No, Elise did a fantastic job. We all know that. She was amazing, and it really revealed what they were all about. But I took care of the black colleges, universities, opportunity zones.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to go reverse order. Opportunity zones. Straight line. There is absolutely no data that exists that shows opportunity zones greatly benefited African Americans. In fact, one of the Baltimore pastors who stood with Donald Trump when it was announced came on this show 6 months later and blasted them, saying it hasn't been working. Now, Senator Tim Scott, he's been running around touting opportunity zones as well. No data, no numbers, no economic numbers, no jobs, no nothing, just them saying, oh, we did a great job. Then you hear him talk about criminal justice reform. Let me also remind y'all, that was led by Democrats in the House. They control the House. When it went to the Senate, it was Democrats, Dick Durbin, Kamala Harris, Senators Dick Durbin, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Republican Chuck Grassley, who chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee, who said, this bill ain't good enough. Then the bill got toughened. Then it went to Trump's desk for signature. But he sits here and claims, oh, these presidents, they come here begging and they got to keep begging, and I made HBCU funding permanent. That's what he says. The likes of Senator Tim Scott and others, they have repeated that lie. And for people who don't read, who are simply not engaged, they don't understand that information. Well, one of the folks who has been president of a couple of HBCUs actually was in D.C. and in an Oval Office. So, of all people, he would probably have a vested interest in whether or not what Trump said was true or false. Joining me right now is Dr. Walter Kimbrough. Of course, he was president at Dillard. He was also president in Arkansas there as well. Philander, you've done work at Morehouse. Did I miss any other HBCUs?
Albany State.
Albany State. All right, so let's just say you got your HBCU credentials.
Yep.
All right, and you have been tweeting this stuff, you've been reporting this stuff, and it grates on you every time you hear this man say what he says about HBCUs.
Yep. It just... I mean, being an educator, you really want to focus on the truth and people understanding. And because Trump, and I think Greg Carr talked about it last week, his superpower, we got to give him credit. He just lies and there's no retribution, and he just says it over and over again, so people feel like that's the right thing. They have no idea. I don't even think he understands how the federal budget works because of the way he talks about how I did X, Y, and Z. And so it's really, an opportunity for us to explain how federal funding for HBCUs works and who has really done the work to provide funding for HBCUs. So that's why I keep pushing back to say, no, this is an opportunity to tell what we need, and then to keep pushing for additional funding, because the power doesn't necessarily reside with the president. It's going to be through Congress, and that's where a lot of the movement has happened.
So let's deal with this first. They keep saying, oh, that was this program. And it's like, no, we guaranteed funding. And when people hear that, they think, oh, there are billions of dollars that are now guaranteed for HBCUs because the benevolent benefactor, Daddy Trump, actually made it possible. It's a program. Explain to people this program.
So it's one program that was started by George W. Bush in the 2008 budget, it was supposed to be a 2-year program to add $85 million to HBCUs, about $250 million when you add Hispanic serving institutions and other minority serving institutions.
$85 million for HBCUs, about $250 million for Hispanic serving institutions.
Everybody together. That includes $85 million.
Now, first of all, for people who don't know, how many HBCUs are there?
So we're talking about 101, 102 HBCUs.
Okay, so 85 million, 101. Now we talk about Hispanic serving institutions. Again, for all the silly Negroes out there who I got to deal with on this one, see, there they go, Hispanics get more than us. Explain what compromises an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution.
So the only thing you have to do to be a Hispanic Serving Institution is 25% of your student body is Hispanic. So there are institutions that wake up one morning and say, oh, wow, we're now an HSI. So now they're eligible for that money. So most of these institutions, you could go on the campus and not know it's an HSI because it's still predominantly white. So and there are over 500 institutions that categorize themselves now as HSIs.
All right. So, for instance, my alma mater, Texas A&M, is an HSI. All right. Yep. So people, it just kills me when people go, see, Hispanics are getting more money than us. Don't even know what the hell a HSI is.
Right.
Okay. So this program, it's supposed to be a 2-year program. Okay. Under Bush, then what happened?
Right. So it was going to sunset. When Obama came in, he zeroed it out the budget. Everybody raised hell. President Obama cut the budget. So he was like, oh, man, I'm taking an L on this. So let me come out with a new program under this bill called SAFRA. We're going to take that 85 and the whole 255 million and make it a 10-year program.
Got it.
So when you hear Trump talking about a 10-year program, he got that from Obama. Okay. Obama did it first. He said, okay, I'm going to get y'all because y'all got me on this. So it's going to be a 10-year program. So it came to the end of the 10 years. Trump did the same thing and zeroed it out. He had no interest in trying to do anything different with it. Alma Adams came in and said, nope, we're going to bring this program back. And so she worked with, members of Congress, and I think as a part of the negotiations, I think Lamar Alexander to try to get his
first in the House, you had Representative Alma Adams, Representative Bobby Scott, CBC, and others. It passes the House.
Right.
Then it goes to the Senate. Then Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, frankly, holds it up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they begin to negotiate. And so they're weighing in on the White House as well. So then the White House is like, yo, Lamar, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
They negotiate that. It passes. It comes to his desk. So, again, he signs the overall bill. And so he then, as he markets, taking credit saying, I guaranteed funding to the HBCUs. They don't have to come back to Congress asking for any more money because I hooked them up.
Right. And that's wrong because it's still the one program, $85 million. Within the total federal budget, HBCUs get about $1.5 billion. So this isn't the largest of the programs that's existed out there. So a lot of people say, well, they got money. And that's dangerous too, because people say, well, they don't need any more money because they've been funded permanently. And that's not the deal. It's just one. So it represents less than 7% of all federal HBCU money, because we get money from the Department of Agriculture, from Department of Defense, Department of Interior, National Science Foundation. That's just part of it.
Right.
So that's why you have to push back to let people know that was only part of it. And so he does it. And another thing I tell people, Trump never mentions this funding until after it was signed. I always dare people, find where he made a statement about it to say, we're going to do this. Obama said something about the 10 years before it was passed. Trump never mentioned it. I don't think he knew, honestly.
No, he didn't
I don't think he knew.
Hell no, he didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't know. And so in the end, he was like, oh, this is going to be one of my 4 black talking points. Low unemployment, like you said, opportunity zones, criminal justice, and HBCUs. Those are his 4 points. And if you listen, he says those 4 every time, no explanation.
Right.
That's it.
And there's never a dollar figure attached.
No.
Same with Senator Tim Scott. Senator Tim Scott has gone on Fox News. He's gone on CBS numerous times, touting, how great, benevolent benefactor Daddy Trump has been to black people in HBCUs.
Right. That's part of the problem that and what I try to tell people too, because people will say, well, do HBCUs get more money after Trump becomes president overall in the budget? The answer is yes. There's been more money because the federal budget in his 4 years increased by 70%. He blew the budget out of the water. During Obama's time, his 8 years only increased 14%. So far in Biden's, it's about 7%. So he spent the most money because he wanted to put all the money in the military.
Right.
And that was a part of the challenge. But the HBCU money didn't grow. And I always tell people, don't just look at the end product, because the president presents what's called a skinny budget in February or March. Congress then appropriates the money.
Right.
Some people say the president proposes, Congress disposes. So I always say, go back and look at what he asked for. And if you look over his 4 years, Trump asked for a negative $117 million for HBCUs.
Whoa.
He proposed $117 million worth of cuts in 4 years.
That's the number.
That's the number.
You never want it. They never talk about it.
They will never talk about. They'll look at the end and say, well, HBCU, their budget went up over $100 million. It did because members of Congress said, nope, we're not paying attention to you. We're going to add more money. In his, I think, one of his statements about what Trump did for HBCUs, they'll say he increased HBCU budget by 14%. That was that first year. He didn't do that. That was Doug Jones and Kamala Harris, because they wrote a letter to their colleagues. They had 12 colleagues sign on and say, y'all gonna spend all this money on defense? We gotta take care of HBCUs.
Hold on. Let's not speed of it. So for all them people who say Senator Kamala Harris, she ain't done enough for black people.
Kamala Harris and Doug Jones, that 14% that if you look on the list that they have from the Trump archives about what he did for HBCUs, and you'll see 14%, that 14% you can tie directly to Kamala Harris and Doug Jones. You can look at the letter. They advocated for that. So she was a big part of that money that HBCUs got, but then Trump took credit for it. His first year, he proposed a flat budget. He wasn't trying to give HBCUs any money. And overall, he tried to cut over $100 million. And I'm not even counting SCOG, work study.
SCOG, what is that?
That's a supplemented educational opportunity grant that a lot of black students use all over, not just HBCUs, but that's an important program. And of course, black students know about work study. He tried to just decimate those programs. And so when he presented particularly his FY20 budget, when he got rid of the $85 million, the Thurgood Marshall Fund wrote a letter saying, man, you're trying to cut everything. And that's people don't want to read that. So they just look at the end and say, oh, he did such a great job. I said, look at his budget, because your budget shows what your priorities are.
Right.
And his budget was always a cut for HBCUs.
And the thing that also jumps out at me, again, as we're walking through this, first of all, let's be real clear. He only been to one HBCU campus.
And he wasn't invited by that school. He wasn't invited by them. It was an outside group that rented some space.
That was this third-party group, supposedly Republicans and Democrats. And what happened was the Republicans with that group really flipped that thing into a Trump victory lap and pissed off a bunch of the Democrats. And most of those people in leadership, they got booted out because of what they did. So he probably couldn't even name Benedict.
Trump couldn't name 3 HBCUs if you told him 4. That's the way I look at it. He has no clue. The way we ended up in that Oval Office, that's Omarosa's fault, because she fed into his ego, just like, man, he's going to because we weren't supposed to see him. It was the day before the State of the Union. He's supposed to be trying to get himself together. They use that, and so people see that image. I think you talked about this last week. They see the image of the president in the Oval Office. They're like, well, yeah, he must have done something. It was all stagecraft.
And again, but people who don't understand, look, you got HBCU week. Presidents come here. Right. A lot of those meetings are in the old executive office building, and when Biden or Harris may go speak to them. Right. So what they did was they wanted the photo op. So they ushered all these presidents into the Oval Office. Kellyanne Conway with a feet all in the couch. So they take this photo, and you got all the presidents smiling, and everybody sitting there happy. And let's just be real clear: you had some happy Negroes in that room.
Absolutely, you did. That's why I tell people: you look at those pictures. There's only like 1 or 2 that you can find that you can see me, because I was all the way in the back, and I used the common sense. If the camera can't see you, you can't see the camera. You good? Because I didn't want to. Because when they announced we were going in there, I was like, this is bad. this is going to be bad for everybody. And we were walking out and people's phones blowing up, like their officers saying, yeah, people saw you. I said, yeah, I don't want. And the next morning I was on CNN just like, look, that's not why I came. And Omarosa was upset with me, but I was like, nope, I'm distancing myself because I didn't come here. We came here to talk to DeVos because we know she don't know nothing about education or HBCUs.
Betsy DeVos, who was Secretary of Education.
Right. So we were supposed to spend all our, so the time that could have been useful to try to get her on board, we wasting walking over there taking pictures with your boy and then going back. We just wasted the whole time. It was ridiculous.
And what they then did was when people were speaking outside, I remember Johnny Taylor, Lily Baskerville, Michael Lomax, they tried to spin that and saying, oh, see, they were supportive of the president. First of all, they are over organizations that fight for the money. And they're also nonpartisan. Right. And so that's their responsibility. But look, president's fighting for the money as well. But you also got to understand when you're being used and when you're being played.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can tell, too. I mean, I always tell people the very next day he signed the executive order, and I think back then you did the show and we talked about it, and you talked to Omarosa about it because they talked about how fast it was. And as I told y'all, I was like, it's almost word for word the same thing as Obama's. So it's like no thought was put into it. You just changed a couple of things. It's the same thing. But that's how they play the game. Trump and his people understand. Most people know nothing about HBCU, so I'm going to tell them this is what I did, and his fans say, yep, that's what he did.
That's why all those white people were clapping in that rally.
Yeah, they're just clapping.
So they're like, that's
great.
That's wonderful. But look what he did for the blacks.
Right, but I asked him, it's like, you haven't heard not one HBCU president say any of the things that Trump is saying. Not one. The advocacy groups don't even say that. And there are, like I said, Thurgood Marshall criticized him, and UNCF has criticized him too to say, you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. All right, we want to see what you're going to do. And he didn't do anything. They were just like, so it was all just for show. But it's a part of his 4-point, this is what I do for black people.
Yep. Walter, hold on one second. Folks, we were talking, of course, earlier about Reverend Dr. James Lawson, Jr. And Congresswoman Maxine Waters, she has some votes, but she wanted to share her perspectives on his life and legacy. And so let's quickly go to Congresswoman Waters. Congresswoman Waters, you there?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you so much, Roland. You're the one journalist, owner that we can count on to deal with our leaders and the loss of our leaders, making people be reminded of whom they were and what they stood for and what they did for all of us. And so thank you one more time for doing this and for recognizing the work and the legacy of Reverend James Lawson.
He, of course, pastored the church there in Los Angeles after leaving the South, and he was quite influential in the City of Angels.
Absolutely. He pastored Holman Methodist Church, well-known Methodist church in Los Angeles on Adams Boulevard. And he had almost, I think, 3,000 in that membership. And he held all kinds of seminars and workshops, and he preached nonviolence. This was after he had spent all those years with Dr. Martin Luther King, and Dr. Martin Luther King described him as the strategist on nonviolence. He was an extraordinary human being. He suffered a lot. He was kicked out of Vanderbilt. He was, the leader in some of the sit-ins, and he warned people and the volunteers coming in that this is about not returning the hit. This is about making sure you turn the other cheek, in essence. And that was a hard lesson to teach because most people, rightfully so, were angry at the beatings and the lynchings and all that was going on. But he believed in nonviolence. He was a student of Gandhi's, and he believed in nonviolence. He taught it. He was successful working with Dr. Martin Luther King and probably saving the lives of many who would have engaged in the confrontations.
Well, he believed in it so much that he could have gotten a waiver to avoid being drafted in the military. He chose to go to federal prison, and he said he didn't even want to accept the waiver. That's how much of a pacifist he was.
That's right. He was absolute in his knowledge and his thinking. And again, I think it's important that we can visualize volunteers coming to work in the civil rights movement and then being directed to have to sit in on one of the lessons that was being taught by Dr. James Lawson. He would tell them, this is not for the faint of heart. This is about the fact that you will be beaten. This is about the fact that you will be struck. This is about the fact that you'll be spit on and on and on. And he would let people know that nonviolence was a serious commitment. But you know, the more I think about it, over the years, he probably saved a lot of lives because they would have outgunned us anyway. They would have outdone everything necessary to get rid of us, and that is kill us as they were doing even more. And so we must appreciate what he did. It was a tough job, and it was divisive in some of the Black community that did not believe in it. But in the final analysis, he won. He won with the thinking about what we needed to do to be opposed to, discrimination and racism and violence and all of that.
And one of the things that also, for me, that jumps out, I mean, talk about him being a master strategist. But even at 91, 92, he died at 95. I mean, that mind was sharp as ever. That's the eulogy that he gave at John Lewis's funeral was extraordinary. Everybody talks about Obama. I said, no, the real eulogy was the one James Lawson gave. I played a clip earlier when we were at CBCF, and he happened to be in the room and just sitting in the corner, the back of the room, just listening, and I had to bring him up when I was told he was there. I said, wait a minute. I said, who's here? And he dropped so much knowledge in 5 minutes and 5 seconds. But the other thing, he did not seek credit. He wasn't trying to be a civil rights celebrity, and that was never his thing.
You're absolutely correct. And the fact that he came home to Los Angeles and was the pastor at Holman Methodist Church for 20 years after, being a real leader in the civil rights movement. He was one of the most important assets to Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And Dr. King believed in him, and he trusted him, and he always promoted nonviolence and made it known that he was really taught by James Lawson. So he was an extraordinary man. And you're right about his ability to speak even into his later years in the 90s. He was 95 years old when he passed here just a day or so ago. But he is recorded in history for the role that he played in the civil rights movement. And it was he who encouraged Dr. Martin Luther King to, go to Memphis and to work with the least of these in jobs that people, thought were not good enough for them. It was he who organized that particular meeting and had Dr. Martin Luther King talking with the rubbish workers.
And he told me, he said, my last image of Martin was him in the pulpit at Mason Temple and me on the last row in the church. He said Martin was where he was supposed to be, and I was where I was supposed to be. He did not seek the limelight, but he was absolutely an incredible human being. And I'll say this here, Congresswoman, the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, there are two people who I was really pushing different White House folks to honor with a Medal of Freedom. And I was really pushing them to honor Reverend Lawson. The NAACP gave him the Spingarn Medal. And again, I think that happened only just a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago. And I was really encouraging some White House advisors. And I also said to them that out of all of the civil rights folks who've been honored, the one person who has never been given that award, Ralph Abernathy. And so I encouraged them. And so I hate the fact that, and I literally, when I was at the Medal of Freedom ceremony when Clarence Jones got it, I was talking to some people. I said, man, I really wish y'all would honor Reverend Lawson while he is still among us, and he is now an ancestor. And so hopefully that can happen in the future.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And like I said, when I first started talking with you tonight, We have to do more to recognize our leaders, the most important people in the lives of African Americans in particular. And it's up to us to remind the leadership of this country, who these people are and the contributions they've made. Nobody's going to do that but us, and we've got to do a better job at it. I agree with you.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we dedicated 3 hours yesterday to his life and legacy, and wanted to do the same today. And while we do, when we lose our great folks like this, we always want to sit here and do this, because we know they're not going to get virtually any attention through mainstream media. And as the nation's first black newspaper, Freedom's Journal, said on March 16, 1827, we wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We know how to celebrate our own, and that's why we do it here, and that's why we wanted to get your voice on the record regarding life and legacy of Reverend Dr. James Lawson Jr.
Well, thank you so very much. You're the leader in absolutely recognizing and reminding us of who our leaders are, who have been so instrumental in bringing us to the point that we are today. And I thank you for it. And I thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it, Congresswoman. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, so we're going to get back to our conversation about HBCUs. And before I go to Walter, I'm going to bring the panel in as well. I told y'all, the lion of Trump, right here, is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. You got South Carolina State and other HBCUs in that particular state. Here he is, straight-ass lying on Fox News. Listen.
Who's the president who brought the most money in for historically black colleges and universities? Donald Trump. Who's the president?
And what you have there is 9 seconds of him lying to a mostly white audience, and they like, oh boy, that's great. We feel great. That's a black face lying to them. We played you one clip earlier. Here's Donald Trump lying again when he spoke to Turning Point.
I funded the colleges and black colleges and universities. Nobody else did that. Nobody else even thought of it. And what we're doing.
All right. So now when that clip went out, Walter, you really got pissed off right there. I mean, you were really upset when you said that, as if he was the first person ever to fund HBCUs.
That was just so crazy to me, because HBCUs have received federal funding since 1965. And then the other lie they tell on top.
This was the graphic that you actually posted right here, y'all. And you said they've been getting money since 1966.
So you got them getting that money. And then the other part of that lie is that, well, he's the first to have a White House initiative. No, Jimmy Carter did that. Jimmy Carter, I got to stand up for Georgia because I'm from Atlanta. Jimmy Carter did it. He had HBCU presidents all there. I think they were in the Rose Garden when he created the whole program. So, but they're clapping. People just like, he said, I'm the first to ever think about funding these schools. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And that's why people can't think. It's like, okay, so they had money. You say he restored the funding. So obviously somebody thought about funding him before he got there. He just, off the top of his head, just lying. I funded them. I'm the first to do it. Nobody thought about doing it but me. And they're just clapping.
And again, and what you have is, which really ticks me off, you have these TV anchors, even some of the black ones,
right,
who don't correct them, don't correct any on the record. They just take it as face value because they don't know what the hell is going on. You also posted this tweet right here. You said Trump zero out the $250 million for HBCUs in the fiscal year 20 budget. You lay it out right here. This the budget. Facts.
That's all. I just tell people, look at the budget. You can look at the consolidated budget that shows you where he zeroed it out and where Congress came back and put the money back in. It's real easy. You see a lot of zeros by the Hispanic servant, by the Native American, all the people of color, all that got zeroed out.
Yeah, go back. Come on, go to iPad. You see it right there.
It's zeros.
2020 president's budget. 0, 0, 0. That column right there, y'all. Right there. This see right here. 2020 president's budget. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
That's right.
0.
It's the budget.
Last 0, strengthening predominantly black institutions, HEA, 3A, Section 318. What do you see right there? A 0.
It's the budget. It's there, and
here's the deal. Again, you've been president of 2 institutions. If he did it, you would be saying, this is actually what happened.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I tell people. When his team says his administration forgave the loans for Hurricane Katrina, I always say, absolutely. I met with DeVos twice. I was president of Dillard. We got our loan forgiven. Yes, he did that. So I'm always a straight shooter. They did that. I give them credit for that. So all this other stuff that was lying. I'm going to be a straight shooter about it. If he was doing all these great things, I would just tell the truth. But that was the only thing, and they don't ever mention that. I'm like, that's the thing that you actually did, and you don't even talk about it. They don't talk about it. I'm just like, you can say that, and then you shut somebody like me up, be like, yep, he did it. But they don't ever mention the Katrina loans. Never. And that's what he did. He gets credit for that.
Wow. Let's go to our panel. Let me first start with... Well, let's start with the Tuskegee graduate, Let's go ahead and start with Randy. Randy, go ahead.
I appreciate the work that you've done and showing the real facts. But the problem is that it's a kind of like everywhere. People will hear the lies that Trump is saying and embrace them. And that's what concerns me. Like, how do we get this truth out, this work that you laid out for us?
Yeah, that's, one of the things that, Greg Carr talked about it last week. We've got to continue to keep talking about the facts. I think that's very important. And we just do it over and over again because people, they aren't understanding it. And we have to hit it from multiple levels to keep doing things like that. Right, exactly. Because that's all he's doing. He's saying the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to keep saying the same thing over again. And there are going to be some people that drank the Kool-Aid, and no matter what Trump says, they're going to do it. But I've even found on social media, there are folks where I can show that table and show them the zeros. And I've had people say, oh, I guess I've been misinformed. So, it's probably half and half. There are going to be some that are just idiots, and they're not going to do anything differently. But there are some people who are just like, yeah, I think I better leave this one alone because I really don't know what I'm talking about. So we have to be, like I said, people say he's not message disciplined, but on black people, he has those 4 points. And he mentions them all over again. He can't tell you anything about an opportunity zone. I haven't met anybody who's benefited from an opportunity zone, but he's going to keep saying it.
First of all, you can't even find any data.
Nope.
But before Trump got ousted, I literally reached out to the White House and I said, matter of fact, let me find the email. Because I sent them the email and I said, can y'all provide for me? And again, if they did it, I would have said it.
Yep.
I said, can y'all provide for me any information, any data regarding opportunity zones? And nobody ever got back with me.
Yeah. No, and I've looked for things. There's some research that's been done, but it talks about, are they opportunity zones or gentrification zones? And that's the concern, that they're going to go in some of these communities and build them up, and then black folks won't be able to work there or live there. And that's what's going to happen. So I'm ready to see the research on opportunity zones because some of the things I've seen so far are pretty negative. But he just keeps saying that. People just like, oh. And when you watch him on social media, they'll just say opportunity zones, criminal justice reform, funded HBCUs. They have no idea what any of that means.
And in fact, if you want to understand the lies and how the lies are told, this here is a piece that was done in the Hill newspaper. Look at the date. April 28, 2020. While Congress awards Harvard million, Trump moves to bolster historically black colleges. And so he sits there and he's all smiling, signing the executive order. And in this particular piece here, it's talking about exactly, and so this guy's writing all these different things, and, what's going on and what they're doing. And what you have here, again, blackface Negro, Richard Johnson, director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation's Booker T. Washington Initiative. Okay, I ain't never heard of him. I don't even know who he is. But again, I want y'all to see this article. So he goes in the article. And then talked about the CARES Act, what that included for HBCUs. He graduated in Wiley College. I never forget, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Bessie DeVos. To her credit, see, again, I want you to understand the lies. He writes, as Newsweek reported, U.S. Education Secretary Bessie DeVos expressed concern that stimulus funds were going to schools with large endowments, and she asked schools that didn't need the money to send it along to schools that did. First of all, ain't no school with a big-ass endowment just gonna send the money to some other small school. Stop it. Secretary DeVos gets it, and it is to her credit that she has taken this strong stand on behalf of our HBCUs. They didn't send no damn money to them smaller schools by saying, I know our endowment is $50 billion. Right. We'll go ahead and send y'all this money. And then he goes in here, as mentioned, what drove horrors about faced with President Trump's comments at a press conference, blah, 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 blah. Thus, there is reason for optimism that our valued HBCUs will continue to have the resources they need to support the invaluable national service they provide. There's nothing in this whole article that is a substantive fact, a number or whatever, but the headline is all they wanted. Yep. Trump moves to bolster historically black colleges. This is propaganda.
Yep, and it's a straight lie because, like I said, I looked at his budgets for those 3 largest Department of Education programs. He proposed over $100 million in cuts.
Carol, do this here. I want you to find this dude, this Richard Johnson. Book his ass on the show. I want him to come on the show and defend this article 4 years later.
That's crazy.
Mustafa?
Yeah, well, Doc, thank you for all the work that you have done and continue to do. I think it's interesting that we continue to have this conversation about Donald Trump when we know when he was in office, he lied over 30,000 times. So if somebody lies to you 30,000 times in a 4-year period, I'm not sure how you trust them. My question to you is, we have the Biden administration now. I think the last number I saw was about $15 billion in various programs that are supposed to be going to HBCUs. We have this conversation about Donald Trump and the zeroing out of budgets. Could you share for folks sort of a side-by-side with the 2 different candidates who are probably going to end up being, one of them will be the next president. What does it look like for HBCUs if one gets in or the other?
Right, that's a good question. So once again, I'll just look at their budgets. Each of them now would have proposed 4 budgets. They haven't gone through the full congressional process for Biden's FY25 budget. So if I look at those same 3 programs, Department of Education specifically for HBCUs, and I look at what each of them proposed in the budget, okay? So I indicated already, Trump proposed over $100 million in cuts for HBCUs for just those 3 programs. Biden in 4 years has proposed $352 million for HBCUs. We've seen nothing like, he's been coming hard saying, I'm really pushing the envelope, and even I think some of the House Democrats, because there's an article saying they cut HBCU funding, $30 billion. Okay, I was like, no. He was trying to get new money. Right. He was pushing for that.
First of all, let me deal with that, because again, this is what happens when lies are told. Well, that was a Newsweek article, and I was trying to find the cover, and what happened was, again, Negroes immediately believe in white media, sent that damn thing around. I saw folk posting it on their social media, and there were several, I'm talking about black activists, pastors, and others, and there were several people, I hit their ass, I said, take that shit down. Because what they did was they extrapolated when he was campaigning.
Right.
He announced what he wanted to do for HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions. I went and found the actual document. Then, when he gets in, they forget that first massive bill was like a $10 trillion bill. Right. Okay. They were like, yeah, we ain't funding that. So it go from 10 to 5 to 2.5. That sucker just start going down. I mean, it was like 10. It was a huge number. Yeah. Okay. It started going down. So stuff get cut in the bill. All right. And so then you eventually get the bill. The bill never even got passed. Right. Then it got reworked as well. So they took that and said, oh, Well, because here's what in the bill. Oh, he's cutting HBCU funding. No, that was a It was a promise during the campaign. It wasn't actually real money. It wasn't even in the budget.
Right.
That's what they did.
Right. No, that's what they did. People didn't read that. They don't read any of the articles. They looked at the headline, and that was one of the ones I went and broke down. I was like, first of all, you got a girl who just out of college. She went to Maryland. She don't know nothing about black folks in HBCUs.
No.
And she and didn't interview no black people for the article.
No. Then
none.
NBC News has some young Latina woman see that article, and I eviscerated her on the show and social media. She sees the article. She does a story. Then she interviews 3 HBCU students, some brother from Alabama, A&M, Alabama State.
I remember this.
And he's sitting here, we ain't got this, we ain't got that. And I'm like, fool, you can't even see how much money your school actually got in the damn budget, and you complain about that. It was all a farce. And then the root, again, this is what pisses me off about black targeted and even black owned media. When these Simple Simons, what they do is rewrite the shit white folks write that was wrong and put a black byline on it, and they go, oh, see, I saw it in the root. I saw it. I'm like, no. I'm like, nobody thought to pick the phone up and call? No. Because they just rewrite the stuff and see the headline and just aggregate the news content, and the lie just keeps jumping. And it went from Newsweek to Associated Press to the root. That lie just kept jumping. Yeah.
No, that's what happened. So, you know, Brother Ali, that's the deal. If you put them side by side, Biden has gone hard. He's been pushing Congress. I think, you know, people say, well, you didn't keep a promise. He's asked for more money than anybody. And if I started adding it up, he probably asked for more money in his first term than most presidents asked completely in their entirety of their time being president. He's made the effort.
So when they put this out, again and again, I ain't got a problem saying it, they were horrible at messaging this.
Yeah, absolutely.
They dropped it on the Thursday. Then on Friday, the DOJ announced the schedule for marijuana. There were like 3 or 4 posts on the Biden Twitter feed and the Harris Twitter feed about marijuana, and only one on this. And we had a brother who used to work at the White House on talking about, well, I'm sure they got it to all the HBCU blogs. I was like, no, they didn't. And so this is the reality. Go back to it. $16 billion.
Yep.
And let me be clear. Donald Trump's people cannot show you a document like this that comes near that amount. So when they say he funded, when you have old mushmouth Tim Scott, he funded more than that, it's a straight ass lie.
Yeah. No, it's not a comparison. Like his biggest numbers, Trump would have been from CARES Act, because one of them was done during his term, but then 2 were done under Biden, and they were bigger. So that's going to be his biggest thing. But once again, he tried to cut. I just keep reminding people, look at all of his budgets, and you look at all those zeros, and you'll see. That's the real deal.
Hold up, but before I go to, and again, the reason we're doing this segment, y'all, is because I want y'all to share this. I want you to spread it around. I want you to post it. And so we're showing you actual documents. So you just heard Walter say the CARES Act won. This is the spreadsheet that was sent to me from Congressman Jim Clyburn that came from the Department of Education. What y'all will see right here, you had forgiveness, CARES Act 1. Now, CARES Act 1 was under Trump, right? So y'all see right here, this column right here is CARES Act 1. Y'all see it. So we scroll on down, scroll on down, scroll on down. You see all of the amounts, and then what you see is under CARES Act 1, when you get to the bottom, it was $352.7 million under CARES Act 1. Now, if I slide over here, now I see CARES Act 2. Now, I want y'all to see. Now, again, for everybody at home, y'all, this is the actual spreadsheet. In case y'all think I'm lying, here are the schools. Starting with Alabama A&M, going all the way down to all these schools. Then you got Dillard right there. Walter was there. Keep going. All the HBCUs. These are all the schools, y'all. You see, there's right there. There's Randall, Tuskegee. There's Texas Southern University. Go all the way down, and at the bottom, Xavier. You see, source Department of Education. Now let me go back on up here for the folk out there who can't keep up. Okay, right here, CARES Act 1, side by side, CARES Act 2. So CARES Act 1, Walter, was Trump. CARES Act 2 was Biden.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I want y'all to see the numbers right here. Based upon right now, y'all, for every school under the CARES Act, this is a side-by-side comparison. Left, CARES Act 1, Trump. CARES Act 2, Biden-Harris. Trump-Pence, Biden-Harris. So far, I don't see a single category where HBCUs got more money. These specific HBCUs got more money under Trump than they did under Biden. And y'all, this is a side by side. You see, 13 million for this school under Trump, 26 million for this school under Biden.
And Roland, real quick, the difference between Trump and Biden, you look and see funding pot for Trump for all institutions. This is the money so it's more money, and it's just for HBCUs and MSIs. So
on the CARES Act,
that first one is everybody all in there. So our amount that that's what we got out of that. That was out of the broader pot. So now they pull that pot out a little bit, and you can see the money. So the difference really stands out because they're letting you know this is exactly what we did for your institutions. It's much more money, but they're making that highlight, which is good in that document, to say we separate this out to show you this is what we did specifically.
So right here, 352.7 million under Trump, 575.5 million under Biden. So even if you just take that category, Tim Scott and Donald Trump are lying.
Right.
And then when you go over to the final number, right here, $6.56 billion solely in these programs. And these programs here, and this is the stuff y'all Newsweek didn't bother to go get. You see, CAP forgiveness, CARES Act 1, CARES Act 2, CRRSA Act 1, CRRSA Act 2, American Rescue Plan Act 1, American Rescue Plan Act 2, and then the totals. And just so y'all see, so that first, you see right over here, y'all, Alabama A&M, you see that number right there? They got $207 million. The next Alabama school, $232 million. You keep going down. You see how much the schools got. You see what they got. Who is that? Got 300 and Florida A&M. All y'all rattlers got $307.2 million. You keep going down, 184, 112. But here's also something before I go to Joe. I got to show y'all this here because here's something else that I think is really important that jumps out that folk don't want to deal with. This right here, y'all. In this graphic right here, they show state appropriations. So go to my iPad. So you see right here, fiscal year 2020, Alabama A&M got $46.7 million from Alabama. Then you got Alabama State got $49 million. I'm just going to use those two. 46 and 49 million. Yet when you go over here and you realize, so total state funding in 2020, Alabama A&M and Alabama State got $47 and $54 million. In federal COVID relief funding alone, the schools got $207 million and $232 million. That means in federal COVID funding alone, those two Alabama colleges got 4 times as much money from the federal government than Alabama gave them in funding. 4 times as much money. So when you sit, and so let's just go down over here. So you take Florida A&M. Florida gave them $136.9 million in funding. Federal COVID money, $307.2 million. That's more than double the state gave them. So for all y'all folks sitting at home, right here shows you the difference between a Trump budget and a Biden budget. This ain't caping, this ain't plantation, this ain't butter and biscuits, all the bullshit terms y'all use. This is hardcore data that shows you apples to apples, oranges to oranges, for some of y'all chitlins to chitlins. So you now understand what the numbers look like when we talk about what a Trump administration looks like and what a Biden administration looks like. Is right here in the data. Joe.
Hello, Dr. Kimbrough. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. Kind of piggybacking on the other questions, I'd be interested in your thoughts related to strategy should, God forbid, Trump wins, and or regardless of who wins, there's more of a pushback or a pull away as it pertains to funding for Black institutions, because that's theoretically a possibility. And then a question that's maybe not so connected, but it's something that I wonder about quite a bit. The whole idea of philanthropy giving by alums of predominantly Black institutions, of HBCUs. How do we improve that? I mean, often they don't have the endowments that PWIs do. And, you know, there are some economic realities related to that. You, first generation, you come from more modest means, you won't have as much money to give. But how do we create and continue to bring along and reinforce that culture to be a part of it? I mean, they'll never do without federal funding, nor should they, because the federal government ought to be helping to secure futures of colleges, et cetera. They should be part of that because it is our tax dollars. But how do you bring that along? I'd be interested in your thoughts, having been at a couple of HBCUs.
You answer that question. I want us to also remember this here, and that is Secretary Cardona and Secretary Vilsack, Education as well as Agriculture, they sent letters to 16 states based upon research that was done by another group that shows that that land grant HBCUs, Florida A&M, Prairie View A&M, North Carolina A&T, and others, were cheated out of $12 billion in funding. Go to my iPad. These 16 governors received letters. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia. There are HBCU land grant institutions in 18 states, Delaware and Ohio, have equitably funded their respective universities. Okay? Based upon the research, that these schools, now mind you, this is only for a certain period. We're not talking, 12 billion historically. No, this is only for like
1987.
Yeah, from 1987 to present day.
Yeah, I can't think exactly when they stopped it, but maybe like almost 30 years.
So for about 30-year period, HBCUs cheated out $12 billion. So when they talk about buildings and things along those lines,
absolutely.
Well, hell, when you've been cheated out $12 billion, you can't build shit.
Right.
And so part of our deal needs to be Black-owned media, but also alumni and just Black folks in general, saying to Georgia, you sitting on billions of dollars surplus. When are you going to give Fort Valley State their $1.2 billion? And going down the line. Mm-hmm. This is just land grant money.
Right.
This is not states underfunding them. This is money that the federal government sent to the states that they diverted away from the HBCUs to the white schools.
Yeah. Yeah, And I think part of the credit they should get, even as this administration, is to just put it out there. They saw it and said, look, y'all need to be held accountable. Now, of course, most of these Southern governors are pushing back. Well, we can do, but I give them some credit for even making this a part of our consciousness to say, we need to keep pushing for this. So I think that's important. Joe, to your points real quick, historically, HBCUs have done well despite who was in the White House. I don't probably agree with Rand Paul a lot, but I do agree with him when he said when Democrats are in control, Republicans are conservatives. But when Republicans are in control, there are no conservatives. So that's why, Trump tried to cut the budget, but HBCUs ended up getting over $100 million more when he was president because everybody realized this dude just going to spend, so we about to get some for our school. So we just take advantage of it. So there has always been good bipartisan support. Probably HBCUs get more bipartisan support than most things do. So I'm not as concerned about that. If they do some things with Department of Ed, that can make things tricky because I'm more concerned about what they do with, work study and grant programs. So that would be detrimental. So I have a concern about that.
And again, hold on, sit right there. But people don't understand the reason that's detrimental because when you talk about most of your HBCUs, they are surviving on the students' financial aid.
Yeah.
So when we talk about HBCU funding, research dollars and grants, that's one thing. When we talk about cuts to Pell Grants, that's a cut to HBCUs. Yeah. When you talk about cuts to other loan programs, that's a cut to HBCUs. Right. And so when we talk about the impact on cuts, education cuts, they hurt HBCUs disproportionately because you've got some schools, 90+% of the entire school's operating budget is solely based upon student tuition. That's why when the Obama administration totally screwed up with the Parent Plus loan, when they announced it, that was devastating to HBCUs because that dropped in like August, and you saw 25, 30, 40% of students not showing up, and that was massive holes in budgets.
Yeah, no, people struggle with that. They rolled it out in a bad way. So I found out Norman Francis called me. He was like, are you looking at your enrollment? That's how I found out, because he called me. So that was part of the challenge. But you're right. And once again, I tell people, go look at the budgets. Go look at, Trump did work with the institutions to bring back year-round Pell Grant. Go back and look and see what he proposed for Pell Grants. We don't talk about that. And HBCUs are 2/3 Pell Grants for all HBCU students. Nationally, all college students about 35% Pell Grants. So we're double.
So if House Republicans are out here talking about we need to slash Pell Grants, that means they are actually trying to gut HBCUs.
Yep, that's us. So we have to protect that. So which so far Congress has done a good job. Even when Trump was president, tried to cut it, they were able to support it. John, your other point in terms of giving. The Pew Research data says that still African Americans are the most generous people in the United States. And I think sometimes people lament to say, well, why is the percentage of HBCU giving so low? And I think about it differently because a lot of, black folks who they're active, with their institution, they're very active in church too. So they give in the church first. I'm a preacher's kid. Right. So that's part of it. So it's not that they aren't giving. So I think we have to continue to get them to try to figure out how do we support both. Mark Morial talks about a civic tithe where you tithe to church and you tithe to community organizations. So that's part of it. And then we got to get more of our churches to do some things like Alfred Street does in Virginia where, they do big HBCU weekend. They do a college fair. They have a HBCU president come speak. They give them, I spoke during COVID, $50,000 for Dillard that was unrestricted. We need everybody doing those kinds of things because black folks are giving, and it might not just be directly to the institution. Some of that is going to churches. So we've got to partner a little bit better. And I know UNCF was trying to do a big faith-based initiative to try to do some of that. So, but we still can do a better job in terms of improving those rates. When I was at Dillard, our alumni giving rate was only 4%, but right before COVID, we got to 23%. So there is some margins that we can move that to, but we've got to have other partnerships.
But also, I want us to also recognize that when we are fighting, when you're fighting on behalf of the Fearless Fund, when you're fighting with the stuff that Randy is doing in terms of battling these companies with DEI, black giving is directly impacted by black earning. And when you have a black college graduate who's earning on average less than a white high school graduate, then black people having more student loan debt than anybody else, all of those things has an impact on black giving. The fact of the matter is this here. If black people are able to make more money, then we are able to give. And this is where, right here, where I talk about Project 2025. For anybody who's black understanding, they want to go after, in a huge way, federal bureaucracy. Black people over-index in government jobs. That's where you see more black people making high 5- and 6-figure salaries. So when they start yelling government cuts, that means government jobs. That means disproportionately black people.
Yeah.
So that means it's gonna be less giving. So we have to understand, and I'm all, look, of all HBCUs, I've been to 58 of them. And I've done 19 commencements, I think I did 19 commencements, 19 or 20. And I'm always talking about how we have to give. And my point is this here. If it's going from 4 to 23%, I'm saying I don't care if you can only send $5.
Right.
Send it.
Send it, yeah.
There's no excuse. So a HBCU should have 100% giving, because even if you just send in $1, you sending $1 is better than you sending nothing. But we also have to understand the battle is to be fighting for higher wages, $15 an hour, all of those things, because that also directly impacts our ability to be able to give to our institutions. And even if we didn't attend one, it allows for us to be able to also be able to write those checks and be philanthropic for that. I'll say this. I believe, Walter, final point here is, and I understand the role that they play. I understand it's very delicate. But this is also where, as far as I'm concerned, UNCF, Thurgood Marshall, NAFIO, and any organization out there that is as an advocate for HBCUs should be putting out their own fact sheets. And again, this is not them taking sides.
Right.
But they should say, this is what we got under Obama. This is what Trump was proposing and what we got. And this is what we got under Biden-Harris. So the broader HBCU community has the facts coming from those organizations. That also has to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then you can use those numbers, like particularly with what Biden has proposed, you can start to use that as your new floor and build off of that. So you can see how things have done differently to say, but this is what we got before, and now to this guy's coming in and propose a lot of things. So we can build on that. So I agree. It doesn't, like you said, it's just presenting the facts to say this is so people understand how funding works. That's important for them to know. And then to advocate to say, no matter who's elected, locally, federally, we need to make sure that they take our interests as a part of their job. So, but they need the facts. So I agree.
Absolutely. Dr. Walter Kimbrough, Frat, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, folks. Listen, we are out of time. I was going to, of course, show you the video from Warwick Dunn's golf tournament. I will do that tomorrow. I also deal with Caitlin Clark tomorrow as well. So, but I just thought this subject was really critically important. And we're going to be doing more of this because here's the piece. I don't have time for a lot of the BS that I see happening out here. I'm seeing a bunch of crap on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, all those other different places where you have no data, no information, but you got emotion. And we're all about showing you exactly, here are the facts. Now, when you have these fools out there who like, oh man, you caping for so-and-so or whatever, I don't give a damn what y'all say, but the facts are the facts. And the reality is, we are going to advocate for black people. We're going to advocate for policies that have a positive impact on black people. Now, if most of those policies are lining up with Biden-Harris, so be it. The Republicans have all the opportunity in the world to do right. Trump, all his little chat, show me his HBCU proposal. Doesn't exist. Don't bring that little BS platinum plan he put out there, which was atrocious, like his damn tennis shoes. Okay? But we have got to be operating in facts, and we have got to be understanding who is doing what, because then you begin to vote accordingly. I don't agree with anybody on everything. I've been kicking Biden-Harris administration on several issues, but I will say this here, and I say to the Republicans, if you are doing right, we gonna say it. But if you start lying about what you're doing, we gonna cut you as well. Just so you know how we roll. Mustafa, Randy, Joe, I appreciate y'all being on today's panel. Thank you so very much. Folks, that is it for us. When you support this show and this network, this is the kind of work that you're supporting. The ability for us to be able to have these conversations, broadcast this stuff, push this out, because the bottom line is we've got to be able to deal with the massive misinformation that is being kicked to black people every single day. They want us saying wrong, ignorant stuff that's based upon lies. And so we're not going to have any of that. And so please support us in what we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check-in money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003-7-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And I want y'all to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. And let me do this here real quick here, y'all. Give me 1 second so I can load this up. So I'm getting off the plane. I was in Atlanta. And I'm flying back into D.C. and I get off the plane, and as I'm walking off the plane, this brother is sitting there. He's reading his book, and he is like really, really, really into this book. So I'm walking by, so I see the cover. I said, "Oh, damn, that's my book." So I walk up to him. I said, "Excuse me, would you like for me to sign that?" And he was like, "Oh my God!" So he jumps up, gets a pen. So his name is Pierre, and I posted this on my Instagram page. And he responded to it as well. So I personally autographed his book. So I appreciate him buying. I appreciate all of y'all buying the book as well. And so, look, I've done this for other people. I've seen them, and people have come to my speeches, brought their own copies or whatever. And so be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. If you want to understand Project 2025, you want to understand Ed Bloom going after Fearless Fund, if you want to understand a lot of these policies, White Fear breaks it down. And I dropped it September 2022. I told y'all this stuff was going down. So be sure to get a copy of that book. All right, y'all. See y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?